Okay, so this is my second time recording this because I'm an idiot and didn't hit record the first time. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and apologize for my microphone quality right from the start. It's kind of awful, and I want to get a new microphone as soon as I get a chance. So basically, as you can clearly tell by the title, this is how you do Twixtor the right way. As far as I know, the way that it was actually meant to happen. Um, no, there's no presets. Don't buy them. Save your money. There's no point. Whenever the people made it, it was purely just off-scene selection. And again, the basic part of this tutorial is literally going to be just for, it's not for Twixtor settings or anything, but it's like, there will be warps because some scenes won't work as good as others. This is like kind of a thing where you have to judge if the scene is good or not. So I'm going to show you 3 different scenarios. The last one is the best scenario, and then the other 2 are what you should try and look out for. So one thing is a common thing that happens with a lot of people whenever they try and Twixtor is movement with their mouth, their eyes when they blink, and their hair if their hair moves a lot, and also stuff like this, like particles and everything in the scene. They can warp. I didn't really have any issues with it warping too much with the particles, but obviously as you can see how much the hair moves, there's a little bit of warp. There's some warp here as well. The next scene is actually scaled in a little bit. So basically the whole reason this happens with here is because whatever it's trying to Twixtor, which in the sense it's Twixtoring everything. Why this happens here is simply because something is moving off of the screen and it's trying to actually figure that out what it is, and it's merging frames, so it looks kind of weird. That's why I had that scaled in, but you know, that's just one example of how you can hide it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It kind of depends on how big it is. Then the next scene, which is the good one, what you should actually get for another thing, try and get scenes that actually have similar movement. So this, basically, as you can see, it has consistent movement all the way around, like it's basically the same thing the entire time. Excuse me. That's something you want to actually make sure you can have. It's not really necessary, but if you want good Twixtor, that would probably be the best. Try and stay away from clips where like someone's turning around, or like I said, if they're going off the screen like so. And moving on to the next scene, this is a good scenario. So basically there's nothing really going on too much, just literally her moving really similar movements, so there's not really going to be that much warp except for here, because like her hair here is basically getting warped with the side of her dress, so that's why there's warp there. And then there's some warp here because whenever she comes up, the hair is going to be, you know, warping with the dress again. So I'm going to go ahead and preview these so you can actually see how they look in real time. So these are stretched out. The first one isn't stretched out that much. The other 2 are. So this is what they actually look like in real time. So obviously, as you can clearly tell, the last scene was a lot better, which I purposely did that in terms of scene selection on purpose, just to show you that like Twixtor settings will never be the same. Like, don't ever fucking buy them because it's pointless, because literally whoever you bought them from or made them, all they did was they tried it on different scenes and scenarios, and if it worked, then they considered it a preset. That does not mean it's going to work for every scene. Like, there is no such thing technically as a warpless preset, because you can't. You have to, which we'll move on to that later in the next tutorial I might make. It's for advanced Twixtor, which is like mats, like motion mats, foreground points, and alternative motion source. Which again, we'll get onto that in the next tutorial. This is just for people who are just starting with Twixtor. So like I said, just try and stay away from things that move really weird like this with her hair. Stay away from things that move off screen, and like I said, try and find things that have similar movement, because like this had similar movement, so like obviously there's not a terrible amount of warp here like on Kaneki. However, you can clearly see whenever he went off screen that, you know, there is some warp. But with this scene, she stays on screen in the middle, and she does similar movements, so that's why there's not half as much warp. So I can even slow this down a little bit more. So let me drag this out, tap U here, and we're going to drag this out to 20. We'll put this down to third because I don't want to take forever trying to render this. And as you can clearly tell, it is slower, and we're actually going to move into how to do this. So basically what you want to do, so let me make a new project really quickly. So frame rate 23.976. This is the frame rate that I'm like 99.9% sure all of anime is encoded into. So just leave it at that. That is the exact frame rate. And you can change the comp name to whatever. For this, I'm just going to call it main. Width and height, I guess, doesn't really matter. You can have that to whatever you want. For this, I'm going to have the duration to 1 minute 20 seconds. The reason being is because we're going to be stretching out the clips, and we don't want to run out of timeline, and we don't want to change that later. But if you have to, just right click the composition, the main comp, or whichever one you're trying to extend, go to composition settings, and then change the duration there, and then just hit OK. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and pick some scenes out. So let's see. Should be some in the opening. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and take this one, and we're gonna make a new folder. You don't have to do this, but I do this just to stay organized and not really confuse a lot of people. So we're gonna go ahead and put that in there. I'm gonna take it out, put it into the main comp, and as you can see, it's Kaneki and this other person who I don't even remember their name. Toka, I think, right? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, we're going to cut the clip to where the last frame is for Kaneki. Or, sorry, I did that wrong. Kaneki, there. And we have just this for her. In the meantime, we're actually going to delete her half yet, so far. And we just want this right now, okay? And what we want to do, I'm going to put this to half because it's ugly as shit. You want to hold down Control, Shift, and C and create or pre-compose, and make sure you leave all attributes in main and change it, the title of the composition name, to whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. So I'm just call this Twix1. And as you can see, it's the same size. However, if you double click it, it's going to show the entire video because it's basically pre-composed the actual video layer. It didn't change the size. You only changed the cut in the main comp, I guess, if that makes any sense. You'll understand it later, but anyway, you want to hit I and O, which makes you go to the very first frame and the very last frame. I is first, O is last. So what I normally do is go to the last frame, so I hit O, and then I double click the composition, and what that'll do is it'll literally keep me to where whatever my part where I cut the timeline was, and it'll do that in this comp. So I'm gonna hit Control Shift D, cut it, and we're gonna go back to main, hit I, go back here, and see everything's fine. Okay, so now we can actually move on to the Twixtor part. So pay attention to Kaneki. So as you can see, I just moved the frame. So to do that, you hit page up, page down. So page down is forward, page up is backwards. So pay attention. So I went down once, which is one frame forward, and he didn't move. If I hit it again, he did move. Hit it, he didn't move. He didn't move. So basically, because of this, he moves every 2 frames. However, the scenario can be different sometimes. Like, what I mean by that is, like, you want to focus on character movement, because what animators will do, unless it's animated really, really good, is that they'll have they'll have the character animated at a slower frame rate than the background. So the background will move, which that doesn't matter. Like, you don't focus on that. You focus on whatever you're trying to Twixtor. So basically, character movements, you know. So like I said, this is every 2 frames he moves. So basically what you want to do is open up Twixtor, the normal Twixtor. I guess it doesn't matter which one you use, but I use normal Twixtor for this. Turn up the motion sensitivity to 100, that's just what I use. And if you have Twixtor 7, you would uncheck this, and if you don't, you would just change the input frame rate. And what you want to do is do 23.976 divided by 2. Depending on the anime, it might be different for you. Typically, it'd be 2, 3, or 4 frame difference. But majority of the time it's either 2 or 3, unless they're really lazy, and then it'd be 4. But yeah, you want to make sure you do 23.976 divided by 2 or 3, like I said, depending on the frame. So basically what you're doing is you're dividing the encoded frame rate of anime by 2 to 3 frames. And what that's going to do is it's going to be consistent movement with character. So if I hit it, so if I hit every frame now, it's going to move every single frame, which is what we want for the Twixtor. Okay, so we're going to hit I, go back. It says we're in our main comp right now, okay? You want to hit down Control, Alt, and T. Sorry, you want to make sure it's selected. And we've got keyframes here already. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it don't. So we already have keyframes, and what we're going to go ahead and do is go to the last frame, make this, and we're going to drag it out. Oh, actually, wait. Okay, sorry, I told you wrong. It's kind of different for some people. Like me, normally in compositions, it doesn't do that. But we're going to stretch this out to 10 seconds when the original animation was only 2. So just to show you just how amazing this is, and I'll explain to you how this works as far as I know, this method. So basically, if I hit it... Alright, sorry about that. We had some issues, but we're back. I don't know exactly what happened, but we're good now. So yeah, we're at the 10 seconds, and as you can clearly see, he's definitely Twixtored, and there's not a lot of warp except for here, because these things move a lot of the strings, and this moves a lot. His hair does warp a tiny bit, but it's not really all that noticeable, and plus, like, that's not even that big of a deal. So if you want to get more in detail with the time wrapping, like if you want to hit a certain beat, this is just how to stretch it out and make it really slow. However, if you want to hit a beat, so let's say we have a beat on the 1 second, so we're gonna go, let's see, here, and we're gonna hold down Control, and we're gonna drag how far we want it out. We want to highlight the 2 keyframes, go into graph editor, which is right here, click one of the ones. I normally do the top one first, whichever one's in front, and then you want to drag it down and then drag this one up, but you want to make sure that it never goes down like this, otherwise it's going to look awful. Never make sure that this one goes up either, and you want to make sure it has a nice area, and make sure this is dragged out too. So what I'm going to go ahead and do actually is cut this how I want it, that way it doesn't look weird, so you can actually see. So obviously, as you can see, he's actually timer mapped a lot better than what he originally was, so there's actually detail to it. So if I go back, you can clearly tell he's a lot slower. So there's not really much to it. I'll go ahead and do it again because I'm really bad at explaining things. So we're gonna go to, let's see, just delete this. Okay, so we're gonna take whatever clip we were using, and this time I'm gonna do Toka. So you want to go to the first frame of where she is, or whoever you're trying to Twixtor, and you want to bring it to the beginning of your composition, your main comp, and make sure it's just her, nothing else, no change in screen or anything, or scenery, sorry. Okay, so since what we did last time, it was divided by 2, we're gonna go ahead and assume that it's gonna be 2, of course, because they're literally turned out the same. So leave all attributes in main, change it whatever you want. So I'm gonna call it faggot this time because why the fuck not? And we're gonna cut it the way we wanted it, so cut off all that, and then we're gonna hit O, so it goes to the last frame of that part, and we're gonna hit delete. So Control Shift D is how you cut clips, by the way, guys. So now that we have it cut, we want to go into this composition, and for me it'd be Shift Space because I have a script called Console Effects. If you want, I can make a tutorial on how to get that. But for you guys, you'd probably go to Effects and Presets, and you would type in Twixtor, and you would go to just normal Twixtor, not Twixtor Pro or anything like that, and turn up the motion sensitivity. If you're on Twixtor 7, you'd have this where you'd have to uncheck that, but if you're not, then you'd have to just type it in. So 23.976 divided by 2. Okay, And if you guys want, I can go more in depth with this to actually show you different scene selections and everything else, which I'm sure I'll be making more tutorials on Twixtor later. Again, actually, let me go ahead and show you where I learned a lot of this from. So this person is literally the OG, the GOAT. They pretty much taught everyone how to Twixtor. So, or the people who pay attention. So this is there's his name. I don't know how to say it, and I'm not gonna destroy it. But anyway, he goes really in depth on it. He tells you the keyboard shortcuts, what everything he means when he says stuff like abbreviations and everything. He explains what motion interpolation is, which is basically warping. So what kind of scenes, what you want to look for, and what you don't want. Pretty much everything you're going to want to know about Twixtor. He even goes in depth with like masking and everything, and he tells you how you should have comps laid out and everything. But anyway, link will be in the description for anyone interested in that. Anyway, so getting back to this, we've divided the native frame rate of the anime by 2 because the character movement moves every 2 frames. It's not consistent. So now that we have the input frame rate where we want it, sorry, we want to go into our main comp, hold down Control Alt and T, and put a keyframe down on the first one if there's not, and then we want to go to the last frame, and you want to drag this keyframe out to however long you want it. So I'm going to move it out to, let's say, 5 seconds. Then we're going to drag the composition out so that way it actually will play, and we're going to go ahead and let this preview. And obviously, as you can see, this scene worked really well because there's not a lot of movement, and plus I believe the scene was already slow motion as is, and her hair doesn't really move like really weird or fast or anything or jittery, so there's not going to be a lot of warp in this scene. So that's basically the tutorial on how to do Twixtor the proper way and the better way, and just, you know, just go flex on your friends, but you know, still show me off, because you know, your boy trying to get clout for YouTube, because my YouTube's dead as fuck, clearly. I also have an Instagram, but we don't talk about that because that's a meme. Anyway, if you guys did enjoy this video or tutorial, if you need help or anything, my Discord is in the description, or just leave a comment and I will get to you whenever I get a chance. So it'll be my first tutorial I've ever made, and I have many more to come for you guys if you guys want them, that is. But anyway, I'm out.